The library is silent except for the crackling of the fire. H.J. Heinz 3 sits alone in the paneled room where his great-grandfather once sketched pickle labels on linen napkins. Outside, Pittsburgh's snow falls thick enough to muffle the city. Inside, the 67-year-old senator stares at photographs spread across the mahogany desk. His son, his beautiful, brilliant son, 45 years old, found dead in a car along a Texas roadside. The official story will say natural causes. The whispers will say something else. He picks up one photograph. Little Jay, at 5, grinning beside the greenhouse where they grew experimental tomatoes together. Jay, at 15, already asking uncomfortable questions about corporate responsibility, about worker wages, about the family fortune built on the backs of women who stood for 12-hour shifts in factories that smelled of vinegar and sugar. Jay, at 25, turning away from the business entirely, choosing environmentalism over empire. The mansion has seen death before. It has absorbed heartbreak into its limestone walls like water into stone. But this death feels different. This death feels like judgment. In the morning, Senator Heinz will board a plane to San Antonio. He will identify his son's body. He will return to arrange a funeral. And 5 weeks later, on a bright April afternoon, his own plane will collide with a helicopter over a Pennsylvania schoolyard, and he will die in a fireball visible for miles. 2 generations of Heinz men, gone within 40 days. The mansion will outlive them both. It always does. These monuments to ambition and achievement, these testaments in stone and glass, they endure while the men who built them crumble to dust. They watch families rise and fracture. They stand as evidence of a peculiar American madness, the belief that if you build something grand enough, solid enough, expensive enough, you can defeat time itself. You can protect the people you love. The Heinz estate proved otherwise. But to understand how a Ketchup fortune created one of Pittsburgh's most magnificent homes, only to watch it become a symbol of tragedy, we must go back. Back to a boy who arrived in America with nothing, who turned cucumbers into an empire, and who truly believed, that wealth could be a force for good. Back to the beginning, when dreams were still innocent, and the mansion existed only as a vision in an immigrant's ambitious mind. Henry John Heinz was born in 1844 in a brick house so small that 3 families lived there, stacked like shipped goods in a warehouse. His parents had come from Bavaria with calloused hands and high hopes, part of that great German wave that washed over Pennsylvania in the 1840s, bringing with it a devotion to hard work that bordered on religious fervor. His father made bricks. His mother made do. The Heinz family garden occupied a plot barely 20 feet square, wedged between the brick house and a neighbor's fence. But Anna Heinz tended that garden with the intensity of a woman who understood that vegetables meant the difference between eating and not eating. Young Henry watched her. He was 8 years old when he noticed something that would change his life. His mother grew more horseradish than the family could possibly use. "We'll sell it," she said, as if it were obvious. As if an 8-year-old boy selling vegetables door to door in Sharpsburg, Pennsylvania, was the most natural thing in the world. He filled a basket. He walked to the neighbors' houses. He returned with coins. The transactions were simple, but something complex happened in young Henry's mind. He had created value where none existed before. He had transformed dirt and seeds and his mother's labor into money. The alchemy thrilled him. By 12, he had expanded. 3.5 acres of horseradish, leased from a nearby farmer. By 16, he was supplying multiple Pittsburgh grocers. Delivering his products in a wheelbarrow, he pushed himself, arriving before dawn so the roots would still be fresh and crisp. He saved every dollar. He studied every transaction. He began to understand something fundamental about American commerce. People didn't just want quality. They wanted consistency. They wanted to know that the horseradish they bought today would taste exactly like the horseradish they bought last week. The Civil War came and went. Henry Heinz was too young to fight and too established in business to be drafted. While other young men died at Gettysburg and Antietam, he expanded his vegetable operation. Some would later criticize this. He never addressed the criticism directly, but he worked harder, as if physical labor could be its own form of patriotism. At 21, he took a train to Philadelphia to observe the food processing facilities there. What he saw appalled him. Horseradish sold in opaque bottles to hide how much of it was actually turnip and chalk. Pickles brightened with copper sulfate, a poison. Tomato products bulked out with pumpkin and colored with coal tar dye. The food industry was built on deception, and customers had no way to know what they were actually eating. Henry Heinz returned to Pittsburgh with a revelation burning in his chest. There was a fortune to be made in honesty. Give customers pure products in clear glass bottles. Let them see what they were buying. Charge a premium for quality and consistency. Trust, he realized, was the ultimate luxury good. In 1869, at age 25, he and a friend named L.C. Noble formed Heinz and Noble. They would sell horseradish, pure grated horseradish, in clear glass bottles. No additives, no substitutions, no lies. The business grew quickly, too quickly. Within 7 years, they had expanded into pickles, sauerkraut, and vinegar. They employed dozens of workers. They purchased their own factory. And in 1875, when a financial panic seized the nation and credit disappeared overnight, Heinz and Noble collapsed under a mountain of debt. Henry Heinz declared bankruptcy on December 17, 1875. He was 31 years old. He sat in his modest home, not yet the mansion, that was still decades away, and tallied his debts. $20,000. A fortune. His business was gone. His reputation was in tatters. His partner blamed him for the expansion that had doomed them. He did not sleep that night. He sat in a chair by the window and watched Sharpsburg's darkness give way to dawn. When the sun rose, he made a decision that would define everything that came after. He would pay back every cent, every supplier, every creditor, every person he owed. It would take years, but he would do it. And then he would rebuild. Some men are broken by failure. Henry Heinz was forged by it. He emerged from bankruptcy with something precious, a reputation for integrity that no amount of money could buy, and a hunger that would never be satisfied. The phoenix rose from the ashes wearing his brother's name. In 1876, barely 6 months after the bankruptcy, Henry Heinz launched a new company, F&J Heinz, named for his brother John and cousin Frederick. Legally, Henry couldn't be listed as owner due to his bankruptcy status. In practice, he ran everything. The product that saved him was ketchup. In the 1870s, ketchup was a dangerous substance. Housewives made it at home because store-bought versions were notorious for spoiling, for containing preservatives like benzoate of soda or actual decomposing tomato matter. The thick texture hid a multitude of sins. Ketchup killed people regularly enough that newspapers barely reported it anymore. Heinz approached the problem with the mind of an engineer and the soul of a missionary. He began with the tomatoes themselves, contracting directly with farmers and specifying exact varieties. He controlled the entire chain of production, from seed to bottle. He experimented obsessively with cooking times, vinegar ratios, and spice combinations. He rejected batch after batch until he found something that tasted consistent, that kept without preservatives, that looked the same in January as it did in July. And he put it in clear bottles. The industry thought he was insane. Clear glass cost more. It showed discoloration. It let light degrade the product. But Heinz understood something they didn't. In an era of food scandals and poison, transparency was the ultimate selling point. Customers could see that Heinz ketchup was pure, red, and free of debris. The clear bottle wasn't just packaging. It was a promise made visible. By 1880, F&J Heinz was producing ketchup, pickles, mustard, and vinegar from a factory in Pittsburgh's North Side. Henry had paid back half his bankruptcy debts. The company employed 150 workers, mostly women, mostly immigrants. He paid them more than his competitors did. He gave them half days on Saturdays. He installed manicured gardens around the factory so they could eat lunch surrounded by flowers instead of industrial grime. His competitors thought this was wasteful. Henry Heinz thought it was investment. Happy workers were productive workers. Loyal workers didn't steal. Women who felt valued told their friends and family to buy Heinz products. Every decision he made multiplied outward in ways his competitors were too short-sighted to calculate. In 1886, riding a train through New York City, Henry looked up at an advertisement for shoes. 21 styles. Something clicked in his brain. Heinz was producing dozens of products, but the number kept changing as items were added or discontinued. He needed something memorable, something that sounded abundant without being specific. 57 varieties. His company was actually making more than 60 products at the time. The number was arbitrary, but 57 had a ring to it. A weight. It sounded like bounty. It sounded like America itself. Land of plenty, land of choice. Land where an immigrant son could offer you 57 different ways to make your food taste better. The slogan appeared on every bottle, every advertisement, every streetcar sign. By 1890, Heinz 57 was American vernacular. The company's revenue topped $2 million a year, an astronomical sum. Henry Heinz was no longer recovering from bankruptcy. He was wealthy beyond anything his brick-making father could have imagined. He bought his first automobile, one of the first in Pittsburgh, and drove it himself through streets designed for horses. He bought shares in banks and real estate. He expanded the factory again and again and again, until it covered 5 acres and employed over 1,000 workers. He installed a swimming pool for employees, a gymnasium, a roof garden, a lecture hall where workers could attend free evening classes. And he began to dream of a house, not just a house, an estate, a place that would announce to Pittsburgh to Pennsylvania, to America, that Henry John Heinz had not merely survived bankruptcy, but had conquered it entirely. A place where his children and grandchildren could grow up surrounded by beauty and culture. A place that would last. The irony would reveal itself later. The house would outlast everyone who loved it. Her name was Sarah Sloan Young, and she did not want to marry a pickle merchant. She was 19 when they met, the daughter of a respectable Irish Protestant family in Pittsburgh, a girl who read poetry and painted watercolors and had dreams that did not include smelling like vinegar for the rest of her life. Henry Heinz was 25, already consumed by his horseradish business, already showing signs of the intensity that would define him. He had very little money and very large plans. He courted her with the persistence of a man who viewed rejection as merely a temporary setback. He brought her horseradish in jars he personally selected for perfect root structure. He explained the economics of the condiment industry while they walked along the Allegheny River. He was, by all accounts, not particularly romantic. But he was honest, completely, almost painfully honest. In an era when men routinely lied to women about finances, about prospects, about their pasts, Henry Heinz told Sarah exactly what he had and what he didn't. He told her about his debts, about his ambitions, about the risks. He offered her not comfort, but partnership in building something that didn't yet exist. She married him in 1869, the same year he started Heinz & Noble. For better or worse, the vow said, they would experience both extremes. The bankruptcy nearly destroyed their marriage. Sarah was 6 months pregnant with their third child when creditors came to inventory their household goods. She watched strange men walk through her home, making lists of her furniture, her dishes, her children's toys. Everything was assessed for auction value. Henry found her crying in the nursery, and he made her a promise. He would fix this. He would make them whole again. He would build them a life so secure that she would never fear losing anything again. It took 15 years, but he kept the promise. By 1890, Sarah Heinz presided over a household of 5 children and a growing social position in Pittsburgh society. She was no longer the embarrassed wife of a bankrupt food merchant. She was Mrs. H.J. Heinz, spouse of one of Pennsylvania's most successful industrialists. Invitations arrived for teas, for galas, for charity events. The same families who had quietly cut her after the bankruptcy now sought her company. She could have been bitter. Some women would have been. Instead, Sarah became something more interesting, a philanthropist with a sharp understanding of class dynamics. She had been poor. She had been humiliated. She knew exactly what it felt like to be judged for circumstances beyond your control. When Henry proposed creating better working conditions for his factory employees, Sarah pushed him further. When he suggested a roof garden, she asked about childcare. When he mentioned a swimming pool, she demanded it be available to workers' families, not just the workers themselves. Together, they developed a philosophy. Wealth was responsibility. The more you had, the more you owed to those who had less. It was a progressive idea for the 1890s, though it had limits. They wanted better treatment for workers, but they didn't want unions. They wanted improved conditions, but they didn't question the fundamental structure that created such disparities in the first place. Their generosity operated entirely within the system that had made them rich. In 1898, with the company flourishing and their children growing, Henry and Sarah began discussing a new home. Not a mansion exactly. Sarah was wary of ostentation, but something significant. A place that reflected their success, yes, but also their values. A house with gardens where their children could learn about plants. A library where they could study. Space for entertaining, for hosting, for building the kind of social network that would protect the family legacy. Henry had something specific in mind. Green lawn. The property sat on a hill in Point Breeze, Pittsburgh's most exclusive neighborhood, where railroad magnates and steel barons built their estates. Green lawn occupied 11 acres of gardens, lawns, and woods. The existing house was substantial but outdated. Henry wanted to transform it into something extraordinary. Not the biggest mansion in Pittsburgh. He would leave that vulgarity to the Carnegies and Fricks, but the most thoughtful, the most beautiful, the most reflective of the lives they had actually lived. Sarah agreed, on one condition. The house must be a home, not a monument. A place where children felt comfortable, where workers felt welcomed, where the purpose was living, not impressing. They shook hands on it. Husband and wife, partners in business and now partners in architecture. They had no way of knowing that the house they were about to create would become famous, not for the happiness it sheltered, but for the tragedies it witnessed. That it would survive their children, their grandchildren, their fortune itself. That it would stand as a testament to the one thing their wealth could never buy, the ability to protect the people they loved from fate. Construction began in 1899. The mansion they envisioned would take 2 years to build, would cost the equivalent of $40 million in today's money, and would become known simply as Green Lawn, the Ketchup King's last attempt to grow, something that might actually last forever. The architects were Alden and Harlow of Pittsburgh, known for banks and municipal buildings, structures built to convey permanence and trust. Henry Heinz gave them an unusual commission. Design a house that looks like a garden, not a fortress. No dark stone, no Gothic pretension. He wanted light, air, and the sense that the outdoors was always just beyond reach. What they created was a red brick colonial revival mansion with white columns and green shutters, more Virginia plantation than Pittsburgh Palace. It sprawled across Green Lawn's hilltop like a contented aristocrat. 3 stories tall, 34 rooms, with so many windows that from certain angles, the house seemed to be more glass than wall. The effect was deliberate. Henry Heinz, who had built his fortune on transparency, literal, actual, see through the bottle transparency, wanted a house that embodied the same principle. The cost was staggering, even by Gilded Age standards. $600,000 for the house itself, equivalent to roughly $40 million today, plus another $200,000 for the grounds and gardens. But cost was never the primary concern. Quality was. The limestone for the foundation was quarried from Indiana, shipped in blocks that each weighed over a ton. The bricks were made in Pennsylvania, but fired to precise specifications. Henry Heinz personally rejected an entire shipment because the red wasn't quite right. The wood came from forests he'd purchased specifically for the project: mahogany from Honduras, oak from Virginia, walnut from Pennsylvania. He employed 50 full-time craftsmen for 2 years, carpenters and stonemasons and plasterers, who understood that every detail would be inspected, evaluated, and judged against a standard that bordered on obsessive. The workers were paid well. Union scale plus 10%, with bonuses for exceptional work. They got hot lunches delivered from a kitchen tent, a rarity on construction sites. Henry Heinz would arrive unannounced at dawn, walk through the emerging structure, run his fingers along joints and seams, ask questions about techniques and materials. The craftsmen learned quickly. This wasn't a man who could be fooled with shortcuts or surface-level quality. The mansion's infrastructure was cutting edge for 1900. Central heating with radiators in every room. A coal furnace in the basement that could warm 34 rooms, even in Pittsburgh's brutal winters. Electricity throughout, powered by the house's own generator. Indoor plumbing with 8 full bathrooms, a shocking number where most American homes still used outhouses. A telephone system with extensions to multiple rooms, allowing communication across the house without shouting or servants running messages. But the innovation that truly set Greenlawn apart was the conservatory. Henry Heinz had always been obsessed with plants. His first business was selling horseradish from his mother's garden. His fortune came from pickling vegetables. He understood, at a cellular level, that his wealth originated in the soil. The conservatory at Greenlawn wasn't merely decorative. It was a 30-foot-long glass structure attached to the south side of the mansion, heated in winter, ventilated in summer, designed to grow orchids and tropical plants that had no business surviving in Pennsylvania. He filled it with specimens collected from around the world: palms from Florida, ferns from the Amazon, orchids from Southeast Asia. He hired a full-time horticulturist whose sole job was maintaining the conservatory. Guests would enter through the main mansion and suddenly find themselves in a jungle, surrounded by vegetation that shouldn't exist, breathing humid air thick with the perfume of flowers that bloomed in defiance of Pittsburgh's seasons. The conservatory was more than botanical indulgence. It was proof of concept. If Henry Heinz could make tropical orchids bloom in Pennsylvania, then anything was possible. If he could control an environment so completely that plants from the equator thrived in Pittsburgh winters, then surely he could control his family's future. He could create a paradise where his children and grandchildren would flourish, protected from the chaos and cruelty of the outside world. The mansion's interior reflected Sarah's influence. She pushed back against Henry's tendency toward grandeur, insisting on rooms that felt livable. The entrance hall was impressive marble floors, a grand staircase with hand-carved banisters, but it flowed into a drawing room designed for actual conversation, with furniture arranged for comfort rather than display. The library held Henry's collection of travel books and business journals, but it also contained Sarah's novels and poetry, shelved together in deliberate equality. The dining room could seat 24, but the family rarely hosted formal dinners. More often, it was used for company gatherings, with Heinz factory managers and their wives invited to dine at the same table as Pittsburgh's elite. This mixing of classes scandalized some of their neighbors, but Henry and Sarah didn't care. They had climbed from nothing. They remembered. Upstairs, the bedrooms were surprisingly modest. The master suite was large, but not ostentatious. With windows overlooking the gardens, Henry was planning with the same obsessive attention he'd given the house. Each of their children had their own room, each with built-in bookshelves and desks, spaces designed to encourage study and contemplation. The servants' quarters were in the attic, as was standard, but here the standard ended. Each servant had a private room rather than shared dormitories. Windows provided natural light. There was heating, running water, and indoor bathrooms, luxuries many Pittsburgh workers didn't have in their own homes. When other industrialists mocked Henry for spoiling his servants, he would shrug. Happy workers are efficient workers. It's just good business. But it wasn't just business. Henry and Sarah Heinz genuinely believed that their good fortune created obligations. The mansion was grand, yes, but it was also supposed to be proof that wealth could be wielded responsibly, that an industrialist could prosper without crushing the people who made that prosperity possible. By 1901, Greenlawn was complete. The Heinz family moved in on a cool April morning. Henry carried Sarah over the threshold, as he had 32 years earlier when they were young and poor, and the future was uncertain. Now they were middle-aged and rich, and the future seemed secure. The mansion would indeed prove secure. It was built to last centuries. But the family who lived there would shatter within decades. And all of Henry Heinz's careful planning, all of Sarah's thoughtful design, all the money and attention and love poured into every brick and board would prove powerless to prevent the tragedies that were already in motion. Walk through Greenlawn's front door, and the first thing you noticed wasn't the marble or the chandelier or even the grand staircase. It was the smell. Flowers, always flowers, cut fresh from the estate gardens every morning and arranged in vases throughout the first floor. In winter, when the outdoor gardens were dormant, blooms came from the conservatory orchids mostly, their heavy perfume mixing with furniture polish and the faint scent of coal from the heating system. The entrance hall floor was Italian marble, installed in an intricate pattern that took craftsmen 6 weeks to lay correctly. Henry had seen similar work in a villa outside Florence during one of his European trips and became obsessed with recreating it. The result was a floor so beautiful that Sarah initially forbade anyone from walking on it, until Henry pointed out the absurdity of marble you couldn't walk on. They compromised. Guests could walk on it, but the children had to take their shoes off. The staircase was the home spine, rising from the entrance hall to the second floor in a graceful curve. The banister was hand-carved walnut, each baluster shaped like a pickle. This was Henry's private joke, his way of ensuring that anyone climbing the stairs would be reminded that all this elegance originated with vegetables. Important visitors pretended not to notice. Children ran their hands along the pickle-shaped posts and giggled. To the left of the entrance was the drawing room, where Sarah held her weekly ladies' group meetings. The furniture was French, upholstered in silk brocade that had to be recovered every 5 years because it faded in the sunlight that poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The windows were the room's real feature. They overlooked the front gardens and provided a view of Penn Avenue below, where the city's traffic flowed past the gates. Sarah liked to sit there in the mornings, watching Pittsburgh wake up, reminding herself that the mansion was connected to the real world, not separate from it. The library occupied the back of the first floor, adjacent to the conservatory. This was Henry's domain. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves held over 3,000 volumes, agricultural texts, business journals, travel narratives, histories of Rome and Greece and Egypt. Henry believed that a successful man needed to understand the empires that had risen and fallen before him. He spent evenings here, smoking cigars that Sarah tolerated but didn't enjoy, reading by lamplight while the conservatory's plants pressed against the glass like curious observers. The conservatory itself was an architectural marvel. Its glass ceiling rose 20 feet at the peak, supported by an iron framework painted white. The temperature was maintained at exactly 75 degrees year-round, regulated by a complex system of steam pipes and ventilation panels. Henry had collected over 200 species of tropical plants, each labeled with Latin names and countries of origin. He would bring business associates here after dinner, leading them through the humid air, pointing out rare orchids and explaining their cultivation as if they were discussing stock portfolios. But the conservatory's true purpose was spiritual, not social. Henry came here when he needed to think, when business problems seemed unsolvable or family tensions ran high. He would sit on a wrought iron bench surrounded by vegetation, close his eyes, and listen to water dripping from the automatic irrigation system. The plants reminded him that growth was natural, that given the right conditions, beautiful things emerged from simple elements: soil, water, light, time. The dining room could accommodate 24 guests at its mahogany table, though it was rarely filled to capacity. The walls were covered in damask wallpaper imported from France, deep burgundy with gold thread. A chandelier hung from a hand-painted ceiling medallion depicting fruit and vegetables in the style of Renaissance still lifes. When questioned about the vegetable motif, Henry would laugh. "I'm reminding everyone where the money came from," including myself. The kitchen was in the basement, as was standard in homes of this era, connected to the dining room via a dumbwaiter system that could transport full meals up 2 floors. It was a massive space, dominated by a cast-iron coal-burning stove that took 3 hours to heat properly. The kitchen employed 4 full-time staff, a head cook, 2 assistants, and a scullery maid, whose job was washing the endless dishes that affluent dining required. Unlike many mansions where servants were invisible, Henry and Sarah frequently visited the kitchen, sampling food, discussing menus, asking about the staff's families. The second floor held the family bedrooms. Henry and Sarah's master suite occupied the southeast corner, with windows on 2 walls providing morning sun and afternoon light. Their bedroom was surprisingly simple: a 4-poster bed, 2 wardrobes, a dressing table, and Sarah's writing desk where she composed letters to friends and family. The adjoining bathroom was luxurious, a porcelain tub large enough for 2, though only Sarah used it, Henry preferring quick showers with running hot water. Still a marvel in 1901. Each of the 5 children had their own bedroom. Clifford, the eldest, had the largest room and used it like an office, with a desk where he practiced managing the company accounts his father was gradually turning over to him. Irene's room was filled with music, a piano, shelves of sheet music, walls decorated with concert programs. Howard's room contained his growing collection of geological specimens. He was fascinated by rocks and minerals, often hiking through Pennsylvania collecting samples. Robert and Della, the youngest, had rooms that were still evolving as they grew, spaces that shifted between childhood toys and adolescent ambitions. The attic housed 8 servants, a butler, 2 maids, a cook, a gardener, a driver, a handyman, and Sarah's personal attendant. Unlike the cramped, airless garrets typical of servants' quarters, Greenlawn's attic was designed with the same attention as the family floors. Each servant had a private room with a window, a bed, a wardrobe, and a small desk. There was a shared bathroom with running water and a common area with comfortable chairs where the staff could relax on their limited free time. This treatment of servants was unusual enough that other wealthy families gossiped about it. The Heinzes were ruining servants by treating them too well, making them forget their place. Henry's response was characteristically blunt. "I've worked alongside people in my factories. I know what they're worth, and it's more than some of my wealthy friends are worth." The basement was the house's machinery. Coal furnace, electrical generator, storage rooms for food and wine, a cold cellar that stayed 40 degrees year-round for preserving meat and vegetables, a laundry room with 2 full-time laundresses who hand-washed the family's clothes and linens. The mechanical systems required constant maintenance. The furnace alone needed cleaning every 2 weeks, but they allowed the mansion to function as a self-contained world, independent of the city's unreliable infrastructure. Outside, the grounds were Henry's final indulgence. 11 acres of carefully designed landscapes, Formal gardens near the house, with geometric beds of roses and peonies, wilder areas further out with meandering paths through stands of oak and maple. A kitchen garden that produced vegetables Henry personally inspected for quality. He employed 3 full-time gardeners who worked year-round, planting in spring, maintaining in summer, preparing beds for winter, planning improvements during the cold months. The gardens weren't just decorative. They were an extension of Henry's business philosophy. He tested tomato varieties here, experimenting with cultivation techniques that could be scaled to his contract farms. He grew experimental cucumbers for pickling. The gardens were a laboratory disguised as leisure, a place where business and beauty merged. What the rooms and gardens couldn't reveal was the invisible architecture of family tension beginning to emerge. By 1905, the mansion was complete. The grounds were mature, and cracks were appearing in the foundation of family unity that no amount of money could repair. The house was perfect. The family living inside it was not. Henry John Heinz died in May 1919 at age 74, not in his beloved conservatory or his library or even his bedroom, but in a suite at Atlantic City's Chalfoni Hotel. He had gone to the shore seeking relief from the pneumonia that had weakened him through the winter. It didn't help. His last words were reportedly to Sarah. God has been good to me. God had been good to him. From bankruptcy to empire, from poverty to palaces, he had built something unprecedented. A food company known worldwide for quality and integrity, a fortune measured in tens of millions, a mansion that would last centuries. He died believing his legacy was secure. He was wrong about that part. Control of the Heinz Company passed to his son, Howard Heinz, who had always been more interested in rocks than business. Howard was competent but uninspired, a man fulfilling an obligation rather than pursuing a passion. Under his management, the company continued to grow. It was too strong to fail, but the innovative spirit that had driven his father was gone. Howard ran Heinz like an inherited trust rather than a living enterprise. Sarah remained at Greenlawn, but the mansion without Henry felt like a museum to a life that had ended. She walked the halls he had planned, sat in the conservatory he had built, looked at the gardens he had designed, and felt his absence in every room. She tried to maintain the household as it had been dinners for company managers, teas for charity groups, Christmas parties for the factory children, but her heart wasn't in it. She was performing a role in a play that had lost its meaning. In 1930, Sarah Heinz died in the master bedroom on the 2nd floor, surrounded by her children. She was 79. The funeral was held in the entrance hall, where she had stood as a bride 40 years earlier when they moved into Greenlawn. 2,000 people attended, a mix of society figures and factory workers who stood side by side in the drawing room and library, united in grief for a woman who had tried to bridge the gap between their worlds. Howard inherited Greenlawn, but he didn't want to live there. Too many memories. Too much mansion. He was in his 60s, a widower with grown children, and the idea of maintaining 34 rooms and 11 acres felt exhausting. He moved to a smaller home in Soakley and began discussions about Greenlawn's future. This was when the mansion's purpose began to shift from home to burden. The Great Depression complicated everything. Even with the Heinz fortune largely intact, people still bought ketchup during the Depression. Maintaining Greenlawn became increasingly difficult. The estate required a staff of 8 full-time servants and 3 gardeners. The coal furnace consumed tons of fuel each winter. The conservatory alone cost thousands annually to heat and maintain. The roof needed repair. The exterior paint was peeling. Deferred maintenance was accumulating like unpaid debt. Meanwhile, the neighborhood was changing. Point Breeze, once Pittsburgh's most exclusive enclave, was slowly being absorbed by the expanding city. The grand estates that had surrounded Greenlawn were being subdivided and sold. Traffic increased on Penn Avenue. The quiet hilltop retreat that Henry had purchased in 1898 was becoming just another wealthy neighborhood in an increasingly dense city. Howard Heinz faced a choice that confronted many heirs of Gilded Age fortunes: maintain an increasingly expensive monument to the past, or find a new purpose for property that no longer fit the present. In 1941, after a decade of debate, he made his decision. He donated green lawn to the University of Pittsburgh. The university accepted gratefully. Pittsburgh needed space for expansion, and 11 acres of prime real estate was a gift they couldn't refuse. But they didn't want a mansion. They wanted classrooms, laboratories, dormitories, functional academic buildings, not a 34-room home designed for a Victorian family. Howard specified in the donation that the mansion itself should be preserved if possible, but he didn't attach strict conditions. He was too practical for that. He knew the university would do what made financial sense, and what made financial sense was rarely preserving aging mansions. The decision haunted him for the rest of his life. In private letters to friends, he expressed regret, not about giving green lawn away that was practical, even generous, but about not fighting harder to preserve it as his father had intended, as a home, as a living place, as something more than real estate with development potential. The mansion sat empty for 2 years while the university debated its future. Vandals broke several windows. Teenagers held parties in the conservatory and broke exotic plants as souvenirs. The gardens grew wild without the 3 full-time gardeners who had maintained them for 40 years. The house that Henry Heinz had built to last centuries began deteriorating after barely 4 decades. In 1943, with World War II consuming resources and attention, the University of Pittsburgh made its final decision: demolish the mansion. The main structure was torn down that summer. The conservatory was dismantled, its glass panes packed away in storage where they were forgotten and eventually destroyed. The marble floors were salvaged and sold. The hand-carved pickle banisters were purchased by an antique dealer and scattered to collectors across Pennsylvania. The 11 acres were cleared and leveled. In 1945, the university broke ground on what became the Graduate School of Public Health, a modern brick building that bore no resemblance to the colonial revival mansion it replaced. The new building was functional, efficient, designed for the mid-20th century rather than the Gilded Age. Only the gardens survived, barely. The university preserved about 3 acres as campus green space, though the carefully designed landscape that Henry Heinz had planned was simplified into generic lawns and trees. The rose beds were removed. The meandering paths were straightened. The kitchen garden became a parking lot. The transformation from green lawn to campus building happened so quickly that many Pittsburghers barely noticed. The mansion had been a private home, rarely seen by the public. Its demolition didn't generate protests or newspaper editorials. It simply disappeared, making way for what the city apparently needed more: education rather than monuments, function rather than beauty, the future rather than the past. But for the Heinz family, still prominent in Pittsburgh through the 1940s and 50s, green lawn's destruction represented something more painful than lost real estate. It was proof that even the most carefully constructed legacy, even a mansion built with unlimited resources and meticulous attention, could vanish. That permanence was an illusion. That all the money and planning and love in the world couldn't protect what you built from the relentless forward motion of time and changing values. The tragedy was just beginning. H.J. Heinz II, grandson of the founder, came of age believing wealth made you invincible. How could he think otherwise? He was born in 1908 into a family worth tens of millions. He grew up in Greenlawn, surrounded by servants and gardens and conservatory orchids. He attended Yale. He married well. He joined the family company and rose through the ranks not because of exceptional talent, but because his last name was on every bottle. He was, by all accounts, a decent man. Not brilliant like his grandfather, not particularly ambitious, but decent. He fulfilled his obligations. He showed up. He did what was expected. In a family business, sometimes that's enough. In 1941, he He became president of H.J. Heinz Company, inheriting control just as Green Lawn was being donated to the University of Pittsburgh. The symbolism was lost on him at the time. As the physical mansion passed out of family hands, he was assuming leadership of the empire that had built it. Two legacies, moving in opposite directions. H.J. too ran the company successfully through World War II and the post-war boom. Heinz Ketchup was in every American kitchen by the 1950s. The company expanded internationally. Revenue climbed year after year. He was a competent steward of his grandfather's legacy, if not an innovator. He and his wife Sarah had 3 children. His eldest son, born in 1938, was named H.J. Heinz III Jack to family, J to everyone else. This boy would carry not just the name, but the weight of the entire family legacy. 3 generations of Heinz men, each named Henry John, each inheriting the burden of protecting what the first had built. Jack Heinz seemed destined for greatness. He was handsome, articulate, educated at Yale like his father. He married well, Teresa Sanches Ferreira, a Portuguese-born heiress whose own family fortune dwarfed even the Heinz wealth. They had 3 sons and seemed to embody dynastic success. Jack served in the military, then joined the family business in 1965. The succession plan was clear. He would eventually run the company, just as his father and grandfather had. But Jack Heinz was different. He had his great-grandfather's intensity, but directed it toward different ends. He cared about civil rights, about environmental protection, about social justice. He looked at the Heinz Company and saw not just a business, but a source of both good and harm jobs, but also pollution, wealth, but also worker exploitation that his great-grandfather's paternalism hadn't fully addressed. In 1971, Jack Heinz made a decision that shocked his family. He left the company. Not quietly, but publicly, announcing that he wanted to pursue public service instead of private profit. He became a leader in environmental organizations. He advocated for stricter pollution controls. He spoke about corporate responsibility in ways that made his father deeply uncomfortable. His father tried to understand. How could the great-grandson of H.J. Heinz, the man who built an empire on the principle that business could be a force for good, reject that empire? But Jack saw it differently. His great-grandfather had tried to reform capitalism from within. Jack wanted to reform it from the outside, using government and activism rather than enlightened self-interest. The family rift was quiet but deep. Jack remained close to his mother, but his relationship with his father became formal, polite, distant. He visited rarely. When he did return to Pittsburgh, he didn't stay at the family's current homes but checked into hotels, maintaining independence even in proximity. Meanwhile, Jack's younger brother, John Heinz, took a different path. John entered politics in the 1970s, serving in the Pennsylvania legislature, then Congress, then the U.S. Senate. He was brilliant, charismatic, and carried the Heinz name with grace. By the 1980s, Senator John Heinz was one of Pennsylvania's most popular politicians, a moderate Republican who worked across party lines and seemed destined for national office. The Heinz family had 2 heirs to its legacy, Jack pursuing environmental activism, John pursuing political power. Both had rejected the traditional path of running the family business. The company continued under professional management, increasingly distant from the family that founded it. The Heinz name remained on the bottles, but the Heinz family's involvement was becoming ceremonial rather than operational. In March 1991, Jack Heinz was found dead in his car along a roadside in Texas. He was 55 years old. The official cause was a heart attack, sudden and unexpected in a man with no known cardiac issues. He died alone, far from family, engaged in environmental work that most of his relatives didn't fully understand or support. Senator John Heinz received the news while in Washington. He made arrangements to fly to Texas immediately. The family would gather. They would mourn. They would try to make sense of how a healthy middle-aged man simply died in his car. John Heinz never made it to Texas. On April 4, 1991, exactly 40 days after his brother's death, Senator John Heinz was aboard a small plane traveling from Williamsport to Philadelphia. The plane developed landing gear problems. A helicopter was dispatched to visually inspect the gear. At approximately 12:30 p.m. over Lower Marion Township, Pennsylvania, the plane and helicopter collided in midair. Both aircraft crashed into an elementary school playground. The senator, both pilots, and 2 children on the ground died instantly. The explosion was visible for miles. Debris rained down on suburban homes. The school building was damaged but didn't collapse. 2 brothers, 2 deaths, 40 days apart. The Heinz family, already devastated by Jack's sudden death, was now shattered completely. H.J. Heinz, too, who had lost both sons within 6 weeks, retreated into grief so profound that friends feared he might not survive it. He was 83 years old, had buried his mother and father and both his sons, and was left wondering what kind of God allowed such things. Pittsburgh mourned Senator Heinz. Publicly, his funeral drew thousands, but the family's private grief was multiplied by the bizarre timing. 40 days, 2 brothers, both in their 50s, both deaths sudden and unexpected. The word curse began appearing in whispered conversations, though no one dared say it directly to the family. The statistical improbability haunted everyone who thought about it carefully. Both men dying within 6 weeks, both in the prime of life, both unexpectedly. If this was chance, it was cruel chance. If it was pattern, the pattern was terrifying. The mansion that might have sheltered the family in their grief was gone, demolished 48 years earlier. There was no green lawn to return to, no conservatory where grieving family members could find solace among the orchids, no library where HJ2 could sit in his grandfather's chair and try to make sense of why. Wealth and power and careful planning couldn't prevent this. H.J. Heinz II died in 1987, 4 years before his sons. He was spared witnessing their deaths, but he had already seen the mansion destroyed, the family legacy splintered, and his sons reject the traditional path he'd expected them to follow. He died believing the Heinz dynasty would continue through his sons. He was wrong. The 4th generation of Heinz heirs inherited wealth but not purpose. None of them ran the company. Most of them left Pittsburgh. The Heinz Company itself was eventually sold to Kraft in 2015 for $46 billion, absorbed into a corporate conglomerate where the founder's name survived only as a brand. The family that had once seemed invincible, protected by tens of millions of dollars and a legacy of industrial dominance, had been reduced to a name on a ketchup bottle and a cautionary tale about wealth's inability to prevent tragedy. When the University of Pittsburgh demolished Green Lawn in 1943, they preserved exactly 3 elements: the entrance gates, a section of the garden wall, and a marble plaque that read, "Green Lawn, home of H.J. Heinz, 1901. The gates stood for another 20 years, marking the entrance to the Graduate School of Public Health until a campus expansion in 1963 required their removal. A facilities manager called the Heinz family to ask if they wanted the gates. No one returned the call. The gates were dismantled and scrapped for their iron content. The garden wall section survived longer, incorporated into a campus pathway, but students who walked beside it had no idea what it had once enclosed. No signage explained. No historical marker indicated that this random stretch of limestone wall had once surrounded one of Pittsburgh's most magnificent private gardens. It was just background architecture, notable only because it was older than the buildings around it. The marble plaque disappeared sometime in the 1970s, probably stolen by a student or simply removed during renovations and never replaced. Today, no one knows where it is. Heinz family members have offered rewards for its recovery. Nothing has surfaced. By 1990, the last physical traces of Green Lawn were gone. The 11 acres that Henry Heinz had so carefully developed had been completely absorbed into the university campus. The Graduate School of Public Health occupied the site where the mansion once stood. Parking lots covered the gardens. The location where the conservatory had stood was now underneath the Public Health Building's west wing, buried under 4 feet of concrete foundation. You could stand on that exact spot today and have no idea you were in a place where tropical orchids once bloomed through Pennsylvania winters, where a self-made millionaire had sought solace among plants, where a family had tried to build something permanent. The university wasn't deliberately erasing history. They simply needed space more than they needed preservation. Post-war Pittsburgh was transforming from industrial powerhouse to educational and medical hub. The University of Pittsburgh was central to that transformation. Green Lawn's 11 acres became classrooms, laboratories, and offices that served thousands of students rather than one family. From a utilitarian perspective, the trade was obvious. One mansion versus buildings that educated doctors, researchers, and public health professionals. One family's nostalgia versus a city's future. Private luxury versus public good. But something was lost that couldn't be calculated in utility. The mansion was a specific expression of a specific moment in American history, when industrial wealth was new enough that the people who earned it remembered poverty, when fortunes were so fresh that the wealthy still felt obligated to justify their money through quality, innovation, and relatively enlightened labor practices. Green Lawn wasn't just a rich man's house. It was a document of an era when American capitalism was still negotiating what it would become. By demolishing it, Pittsburgh lost a teaching tool. Students could have walked through Green Lawn and understood viscerally how the Gilded Age felt, what it valued, how it lived. They could have seen the conservatory and understood Henry Heinz's obsession with control and cultivation. They could have stood in the servants' quarters and noted the unusual generosity, then questioned whether generosity within a hierarchical system is actually progressive or just paternalism with better windows. Instead, they got a modern building with no connection to what came before. The irony is that the University of Pittsburgh eventually recognized what they'd destroyed. In the 1990s, as historic preservation became culturally valued, the university began an oral history project documenting lost campus buildings. Green Lawn featured prominently. They interviewed former servants who had worked there, neighbors who remembered the gardens, university facilities workers who had participated in the demolition. One interview stood out. A maintenance worker who helped tear down the conservatory in 1943 described finding a notebook inside, written in Henry Heinz's handwriting, containing notes about orchid cultivation. The worker couldn't read most of it. The technical terminology was beyond him, but he remembered specific phrases. Temperature is everything. Patience required. Some plants thrive on neglect. Others die from it. The worker threw the notebook away. It seemed like trash at the time. Notes about plants in a building being demolished for wartime purposes. He didn't realize he was disposing of the private thoughts of one of Pittsburgh's most significant industrialists. He certainly didn't know that 50 years later, historians would desperately want to read those exact notes. How many other artifacts were lost? How many letters, photographs, journals, and personal items disappeared during the Rush 1943 demolition? The Heinz family archive has gaps for this period, holes that can never be filled because the documents were thrown into dumpsters or burned as trash. The university's Graduate School of Public Health has been rebuilt twice since replacing Green Lawn, once in 1967 and again in 2004. Each time, the new building was larger, more modern, more suited to contemporary needs. Each time, another layer of Green Lawn was buried deeper beneath concrete and steel. Students pass through every day. They study epidemiology and biostatistics in rooms built above where Henry Heinz once grew orchids. They have no idea. Why would they? There's nothing to tell them. No plaque, no sign, no indication that they're walking through a palimpsest. that beneath their functional modern campus lies the ghost of something more complex and interesting than they can imagine. In 2001, exactly 100 years after Green Lawn was completed, a Heinz family descendant visited the site. She stood in the public health building's lobby and tried to orient herself using old photographs. The entrance hall would have been roughly here, the conservatory there, the gardens extending in that direction, now covered by parking. A security guard approached and asked if she needed help. "I'm trying to find my great-great-grandfather's house," she said. The guard looked confused. "Ma'am, this is a university building. There's no houses here." "I know," she said. "That's the problem. The H.J. Heinz Company headquarters still stands in Pittsburgh's North Side, not far from where the original factory operated. The building is modern now, updated and expanded, but the company maintains a small museum in the lobby. Visitors can see the clear bottles that revolutionized condiment marketing, photographs of Henry Heinz with his employees, and a recreation of the factory roof garden where workers took their breaks. What the museum doesn't show is Green Lawn. A few photographs are displayed, tucked away in a back corner with minimal explanation. Visitors rarely notice them. The mansion doesn't fit the narrative the company wants to tell about innovation and product quality. Green Lawn was personal, not professional. It represented the family rather than the business. The Heinz family fortune was scattered across the fourth generation. Some descendants remained in Pittsburgh, involved in philanthropy and local business. Others left, pursuing lives disconnected from the Ketchup empire that funded them. By the fifth generation, many Heinz descendants don't identify primarily with the family name. They've married and changed names, or they've built separate identities, or they've simply drifted away from the legacy that once defined them. The Heinz name survives most powerfully not through family but through institutions. The Heinz Endowments, founded by Howard Heinz in 1941, control over $2 billion and fund arts, education, and environmental initiatives across Pennsylvania. Heinz Hall, Pittsburgh's symphony venue, bears the family name. The Heinz History Center documents Pittsburgh's past. These institutions will likely outlast any memory of the actual Heinz family members. This is perhaps the final irony. The mansion built to preserve family legacy was demolished, but the institutions funded by family wealth persist. The personal was erased. The public endures. Henry Heinz built Green Lawn to protect his children and grandchildren, to create a physical space where the family would be safe and united. It failed completely at that purpose. But the endowments he and his descendants created will support Pittsburgh's cultural life for generations. In 2015, when Kraft Foods purchased the H.J. Heinz Company for $46 billion, the deal made international news. What didn't make news was that no Heinz family members were involved in the sale negotiations. The company had been publicly traded since 1946. The family retained stock, yes, and profited enormously from the sale, but they had no control over it. The business Henry Heinz founded had outgrown his family completely. Today, if you want to find traces of Henry Heinz in Pittsburgh, you don't look for Green Lawn. Instead, you visit the small historical exhibits, the endowment offices, the photographs in the company museum. You visit the cemetery where he and Sarah are buried, their graves marked by a simple stone that gives no indication of the fortune they accumulated or the mansion they built. You walk through the University of Pittsburgh campus and try to imagine tropical plants blooming underground, beneath the concrete and modern buildings. Or you can do what most people do. You can buy a bottle of Heinz ketchup, turn it around, and read the ingredients. Tomato concentrate, distilled vinegar, high fructose corn syrup, salt, spices. Simple components, combined with precision and consistency. The formula that made Henry Heinz wealthy remains unchanged. The clear bottle that built his reputation for transparency is still used. The product outlasted the mansion, the family control, and even the memory of the man who created it. Most people who consume Heinz ketchup have no idea who J. Heinz was. They don't know about Greenlawn, about the bankruptcy and comeback, about the conservatory orchids or the pickle-shaped banisters or the servants' quarters with private rooms and windows. They know the taste. They know the brand. They trust it, though they couldn't tell you why. That trust, that intangible reputation for quality built over 150 years, is what actually survived. Not the mansion. Not the family unity. Not the careful legacy planning. Just the trust, encoded in a brand, maintained by corporate structures that have nothing to do with the man who started it. When Teresa Heinz Carey, Senator John Heinz's widow, who remarried after his death, speaks about the Heinz family, she emphasizes philanthropy and public service over wealth accumulation. She rarely mentions Greenlawn. When pressed, she acknowledges that she never saw the mansion, as it was demolished before she married into the family. Her connection to the Heinz legacy is entirely institutional. The foundations, the political heritage, the commitment to public good. The fourth and fifth generations of Heinz descendants are spread across the country now, united more by trust funds than by shared purpose. They gather occasionally for foundation meetings or family events, but they don't share a mansion, don't share a business, don't share the kind of unified identity that Henry Heinz imagined when he built Greenlawn. The mansion was supposed to be their anchor. Instead, it became their parable. Stand on the University of Pittsburgh campus, where Greenlawn once spread across 11 acres, and try to reconstruct what Henry Heinz believed he was building. Not just a house, though it was certainly that. Not just a status symbol, though it functioned as that too. He was building a fortress against time, a bulwark against the chaos that had nearly destroyed him during the bankruptcy. A guarantee, written in limestone and mahogany and hand-carved pickle banisters, that his children and grandchildren would be protected from the precarity he had known. He failed completely. The mansion lasted 42 years as a family home. The family unity it was meant to preserve fractured within a generation. The fortune it symbolized was eventually absorbed into corporate structures that had nothing to do with the values Henry Heinz embodied. The legacy he tried to encode in architecture was demolished to make room for a public health building that serves thousands but remembers none. But here's what Henry Heinz understood that still matters. Transparency was revolutionary. In an era when food manufacturers routinely poisoned their customers through negligence or greed, he chose clear bottles and pure products. He made integrity visible. That choice, more than the mansion or the fortune or the elaborate gardens, was his actual legacy. The clear bottle remains. The mansion is gone. This tells you everything about what survives and what doesn't. American industrial history is littered with demolished mansions. The Vanderbilt houses on Fifth Avenue, obliterated for office buildings. The Newport cottages, many destroyed or repurposed. The grand estates of Chicago's meatpacking barons, Pittsburgh's steel magnates, Detroit's automobile pioneers, most are gone, converted or demolished or simply abandoned until they collapsed on their own. We tend to read this as progress. Out with the old, in with the new. Why preserve monuments to inequality? Why maintain mansions when we could build schools, hospitals, and housing? But what we lose is evidence. Greenlawn wasn't just a rich man's house. It was a document of how wealth functioned in the early 20th century, how it was earned and spent and justified. The mansion, as servant quarters with their unusual amenities, showed that even progressive industrialists operated within hierarchical systems they could imagine dismantling. The conservatory demonstrated an obsession with control that extended from vegetables to vegetation to family itself. The library revealed what Henry Heinz thought was important to preserve: agricultural texts, business journals, the histories of fallen empires. All of that is gone now. Future historians won't be able to walk through Greenlawn and understand the Heinz family through physical space. They'll read documents, look at photographs, piece together narratives from fragmentary evidence. Something will be lost that cannot be recovered. The tragedy of the Heinz brothers, Jack dying suddenly in Texas, Senator John killed in a plane crash 40 days later, haunts the family still. It's the kind of coincidence that demands meaning even when none exists. Two brothers, two unexpected deaths, 6 weeks apart. The statistical improbability feels like destiny, like curse, like judgment on wealth that couldn't protect the people it was meant to shield. But perhaps the real tragedy is simpler. Wealth never protects anyone from randomness. Death comes for the poor and rich alike. Plane crashes don't consult bank accounts. Heart attacks don't check investment portfolios. The mansion, the fortune, the carefully constructed legacy, all of it was powerless against the fundamental uncertainty of existence. Henry Heinz built Greenlawn because he remembered being poor. He remembered the bankruptcy, the shame, the nights sitting in darkness wondering how he would feed his family. The mansion was supposed to ensure that his children and grandchildren would never know that fear, that precarity, that vulnerability. Instead, his descendants learned a different lesson. Wealth changes what you're vulnerable to, but it doesn't eliminate vulnerability. Instead of fearing poverty, they experienced the peculiar terror of having everything and watching it slip away anyway. Public deaths, public grief, public scrutiny of whether their wealth made them responsible for outcomes they couldn't control. Senator John Heinz died trying to serve the public, using his inherited wealth to fund a political career dedicated to moderate, pragmatic governance. He was one of Pennsylvania's most beloved politicians precisely because he didn't behave like a wealthy dilettante. He worked. He listened. He built coalitions. His death in a plane crash over a schoolyard was senseless, random, and completely indifferent to his intentions or his family name. There is a photograph from his funeral that captures something essential. Thousands of ordinary Pennsylvanians lining the streets as his casket passed. These weren't people who knew him personally. They were people who felt he represented them, despite or perhaps because of his inherited wealth. The Heinz name, in that moment, meant something more than ketchup. It meant a kind of responsible stewardship that had become increasingly rare among the wealthy. That meaning died with him, or rather it scattered. The Heinz family remains philanthropic, but no single figure embodies the family's values the way the senator did. The name survives on foundations and buildings and bottles, but it's become a brand rather than a legacy, a label rather than an identity. Greenlawn's demolition in 1943 now feels like foreshadowing. The physical mansion couldn't survive changing times and needs. The family unity it was meant to preserve couldn't survive the forces, both tragic and mundane, that pulled it apart. The fortune that built it was eventually absorbed into structures that had nothing to do with the family's original values. What survives is smaller than Henry Heinz imagined, but perhaps more important. The principle that business could be a force for good if conducted with integrity. The idea that wealth created obligations toward those with less. The belief that transparency mattered, that quality mattered, that the relationship between producer and consumer was built on trust that shouldn't be betrayed. These aren't encoded in mansions. They're encoded in choices, in policies, in the daily decisions of how to conduct business. The clear bottle was a more lasting monument than Greenlawn ever could have been because it represented a principle rather than a possession. The American dream, as embodied by Henry Heinz, was never about mansions. It was about the journey from nothing to something, from powerlessness to agency, from being subject to market forces to controlling them. The mansion was a side effect, a symbol, a way of announcing that the journey was complete. But journeys are never complete. The American economy that allowed Henry Heinz to rise from bankruptcy to empire also created the conditions for that empire to be dismantled, sold, and absorbed. The social mobility that lifted him from Shopsburg poverty to Point Breeze mansions also ensured that his descendants would scatter across the country, pursuing their own dreams rather than maintaining his. The mansion is gone. The fortune is dispersed. The family name survives primarily as a brand on condiment bottles. And yet, in a perverse way, Henry Heinz's actual values persist. The commitment to quality, the belief that business should serve customers rather than exploit them, the idea that wealth creates responsibilities. These aren't housed in limestone or mahogany. They're carried by people not always Heinz family members anymore, but anyone who believes that commerce should be conducted with integrity. They're embedded in systems, product testing, transparency regulations, labor protections that Henry Heinz would recognize even if he wouldn't recognize the modern world they inhabit. In the end, Green Lawn failed at its intended purpose because that purpose was impossible. You cannot build a house strong enough to protect your family from tragedy. You cannot accumulate enough wealth to guarantee their safety. You cannot design gardens beautiful enough to prevent suffering or construct conservatories that will bloom forever. What you can do is choose how you earn your money and what you do with it while you're alive. Henry Heinz chose relatively well. Not perfectly, he was a man of his time, with all the blind spots that entailed, but better than many of his peers. He treated workers better, paid them more, created conditions that were humane if still unequal. He built a product that didn't poison its consumers. He paid back his bankruptcy debts when he had no legal obligation to do so. The mansion that was supposed to preserve his legacy is gone. But the legacy itself, complicated, imperfect, but genuine, persists in ways he never anticipated. Not in stone or gardens or hand-carved banisters, but in the simple principle that you can make money without lying, that you can build wealth without destroying the people who create it, that transparency and integrity might actually be good business strategies. It's a smaller legacy than he imagined, but it's the one that lasted. And perhaps that's the final lesson of Green Lawn. The monuments we build to ourselves rarely endure, but the principles we embody sometimes do. The mansion crumbled, the family scattered, the fortune dispersed. But somewhere in America, someone is buying a bottle of Heinz ketchup because they trust it. Because over 150 years, the brand has maintained a reputation for quality and consistency. Because someone named Henry Heinz decided in 1869 that clear bottles and pure products were worth more than short-term profits. That person buying ketchup has no idea about Green Lawn. They've never heard of the conservatory or the gardens or the tragic deaths of two brothers 40 days apart. They just know they can trust the product. And in the end, that trust built by a man who remembered poverty and never forgot what it felt like to lose everything is the only part of the empire that actually proved permanent. The rest was just temporary shelter from a storm that never ends.